On today's episode, please welcome Forrest Pendleton, Chairman of PAN, Pilot Assistance Network. Here's your host, Ryan Argento.
Welcome back to another episode of Engage. Here again with Forrest Pendleton. He's the chair of PAN, the Pilot Assistance Network. Forrest, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity to talk some more with you.
Yeah, PAN is a committee that's peer-to-peer help. It's pilots helping pilots. And I'll throw back to episode 40 where we had you on in December and we talked about PAN specifically. And now it's May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to have you back. There's seemingly a lot of changes going on for mental health for pilots, kind of outside the PAN realm, but in the spirit of May being Mental Health Awareness, ALPA National and some other organizations, they've launched this Are You in the Green campaign, the title of the podcast. Tell me about Mental Health Awareness Month and how the Are You in the Green campaign relates to pilots.
All right, thanks. Yeah, like you said, May is Mental Health Awareness. And as part of that, we being all the ALPA properties are launching an Are You in the Green campaign, which is a reference to the mental health continuum and just taking a second to ask yourself how you're doing mental health wise. Mental health is more than just a lack of mental illness, right? Just like physical health is more than just not having any broken bones. It's deliberately taking care of yourself and checking to see how you're coping with life. Mental health is a complicated topic, and one way to kind of break it down when you're evaluating how you're doing is to thinking of it on a continuum that goes from green to red. And so asking, are you in the green is asking, are you in a safe, are you in a healthy place with your mental wellness? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing self-care? Are you feeling like you have the bandwidth to deal with some unexpected, something comes up in your family life that's unexpected? Do you have the bandwidth to deal with that? Or are you already maxed out and that will put you over the edge? So I sent you the mental health continuum so it can be connected to this podcast so people can look at it. But that's kind of the baseline idea of Are You in the Green? It's just asking, how are you doing mental wellness wise right now?
Yeah. And I'm looking at this continuum now, and I've linked it to the description of the podcast. So you can pause here or go back out, and it's a graphic. It's red, orange, yellow, and green, working backwards. And you can also go to alpa.org/green, and you don't even need your username or password, or if you've forgotten your ALPA number. It's an open site that you can go to that has really a wealth of resources, but it explains this mental health continuum. And one thing I want to point out is it's not necessarily pilot specific or aviation specific. This is a wellness in general, right?
Yeah,
Whether
absolutely.
You're going to work or you're not, or if you're saying, well, I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks, but you just have these feelings, you can reference this continuum. In one case, it's like, I'm healthy, I'm resilient, and you can go down, well, normal fluctuations in my mood, and I have a good sense of humor, and, I've got my normal self-confidence, and I'm physically well, I've been working out. But the reacting phase is the yellow, and that I feel like we can often dip into this pretty easily without anything major going on in our lives, right? And this is common and reversible stresses, reacting and surviving, right? You're irritable, you're impatient, maybe you're nervous, you're anxious. I'm just reading through the things here, but difficulty relaxing or sleeping, muscle tension. We've all been there, right? You have a stressful exam or a check ride or something going on. You're kind of in that mode. And then it goes to injured and ill. How would a pilot or how would a person really dig into this and apply it to what's going on?
So it is a continuum. We're all on this continuum at any one point. And obviously, ideally, we are on the green side and we are healthy and resilient. But life happens. We don't get to go through life with no challenges, no struggles. And when that happens, when we are doing well, when you are in the green, we are resilient. We can react to that appropriately. But that doesn't always happen. And sometimes we have less bandwidth, less capability. And so things knock us down into the yellow or the orange, the reacting or the injured. And that's okay. That's life. That doesn't mean that anything is wrong with us. That doesn't mean that we're less than or we should just buck up and deal. It's just a reality of life can be hard sometimes. But having that self-awareness, and that's what this campaign is about, is giving you the opportunity to be self-aware. How am I doing? Don't just ignore your mental health and assume, well, nope, I'll figure it out. It will be okay. This is an opportunity to say, you know what? I'm not in the green right now. I am in the yellow or maybe even in the orange. And what does that mean? What then now should I do to move back towards the green? What kind of peer support or what social support do I have? Would it be worth it to go talk to a professional? How can I deliberately move back towards where I want to be, which is the resilient, the having the bandwidth to, deal with life on the day to day?
So if you are looking at this chart and you've dipped into the yellow or the orange, what are some of the resources? What can I do if I want help to get back into the green? If I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, I'm always angry and persistently hopeless, and I'm just in self-doubt, and man, my physical and emotional fatigue, like I'm just maxed out. I've got a lot going on in my life. We all understand that. And I'm looking at, this chart and it's like, okay, I'm struggling. Who do I turn to? Where do I go? Pan is a great start, but give me the
Yeah,
broad strokes of that.
Pan is a great start. It's not the only start, though. The first step in any journey is the recognition of where you are. And so that's I don't want to just blow through oh, yeah, I know. Okay, here I am. 'Cause that's a significant step. And then taking care of yourself. So in the yellow, even in some in the orange, simple self-care steps can make a huge difference. I think that mental health is both a really great time for mental health and a really hard time for mental health in today's society, because there's never been a time where we are more able or comfortable recognizing that mental health is important, right? 20 years ago, you just buck up and deal. 30 years ago, if you're depressed, there's something wrong with you. It's not a chemical thing that we recognize now. Back then, it was just you're less than. You are somehow not up to par. We recognize now that's not the case, that mental health is an actual legitimate challenge. It's something that we can struggle with. There are diseases that change the chemical balances in your brain that can cause depression in it. And so in that sense, it's a great time for mental health. On the other side of that, it is never easier to ignore your mental health and do other things than it is now. For an example, I know for me personally, for my mental health, getting up and immediately going on a run with my wife and then taking some time to sit and meditate or read a book or kind of gather myself, have some time in the morning to focus on me and my family before I kind of step into the world is what's best for me, right? Now, the number of times I do that compared to waking up and immediately going on the forums or reading the paper or checking 121 memes to see what the latest posts are or checking my email, right? Those are all so easy to do. Picking up your phone away from getting distracted from what's good for you and doing what's easy or what's distracting. And so that's one of the reasons why so many people right now are struggling with mental health, even though we recognize it as being important.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because we are programmed to always be on the go, and pilots especially are good at compartmentalizing. And so I've got all these things going on, but I can manage. I can do this. And it's not even necessarily I can go fly and compartmentalize that and do my job and do it safely. But there are these looming things, and it's kind of a snowball effect, right? And,
Yeah.
taking that self-care, taking a moment to just check out for 5 minutes, and doesn't have to be a long time, but, meditation, yoga, talking to somebody, even calling a friend and just saying, hey man, I'm not doing that great. Here's what's going on. Or just venting sometimes feels good. So yeah, those are all things that people can do for their own mental health. And, I think for pilots in general, if we want to turn this back to, I guess, a pilot listening to this and who's looking at the continuum on the website, alpa.org/green, and thinking, yeah, but we're pilots. There's, we have to hold a medical, there's FAA regulations. There's a lot of perceived challenges to getting good help with mental health. What are some changes that you're noticing with the FAA in national politics? What are some changes to help pilots get the help they need?
So that's a really timely question, because there are some changes being made at the FAA administration level. Just a little bit of background. Last summer, the Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General issued a report that focused on pilot mental health challenges. It recognized that pilots are discouraged from reporting their mental health conditions due to the stigma associated with it and the impact on their careers and the potential fear of financial hardship. And they required the FAA to collaborate with airlines and unions and the industry to identify what those barriers are and ways to overcome those barriers. And so, based on that, last December, the FAA chartered an aviation rulemaking committee to figure that out. So, an aviation rulemaking committee is simply a committee that's created whenever the FAA is looking to seek advice or recommendations from the industry. And there are ARCs about all sorts of things, going from unmanned aerial vehicles to flying over national parks to humans in space. So they started one in December about mental health and aviation medical clearances. And that just wrapped up in April, and they put out their recommendations. So the mental health ARC put out its recommendations, and based on those recommendations, a lot of opportunity for change. Just going into some that I think listeners would be interested in. We all know, we talked about it last December, the overly burdensome process of from the time you raise your hand and say, I am depressed and I could use help, to getting back to the line. It's a challenge that takes a year plus and has so many hurdles, and the ARC recognized that's unreasonable. So some of the recommendations that they made that might make a big difference, looking to make paperwork easier, more transparent, modernize the IT process for that, but also looking to decrease the window for how long it takes. Right now, from the time you start medication to the time that you can put in your clearance is 6 months. They're looking to drop that down to as low as 2 months to reflect how other civil aviation authorities around the world do it. They also are looking, it's interesting, they're looking to change the way the FAA approaches mental health to be more of an SMS style, looking at risk rather than right now. The FAA historically has looked at, for instance, a mental health diagnosis as binary. If you have depression or if you don't, which we all know depression isn't binary, right? You can be mildly depressed, have no risk to being in the flight deck, to be able to function. But the FAA doesn't look at it like that. They look at it as, oh, you have depression. Okay, you can't fly until that's taken care of. And that's a year-long process. Looking at it from an SMS model where we can assess that risk and recognize, oh, that's minor depression that has no suicidality. We can still work through that. Pilots should be able to get the help they need. They shouldn't have to wait until it's a huge burden on their shoulders. It's major depression before it's worth it to them to get help. We should be able to do it when we first start recognizing that we could use help rather than waiting until it's worse.
You sent me the ARC final report, the mental health ARC final report from the FAA. I don't know if we can link that to the description for those who really want to get into the information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Podcast, but really, at first glance, from my perspective, there's a lot of progress here. And I think the one that may hit home for a lot of people is making mental health kind of equal to disabilities and getting your medical back and flying. And they're starting to recognize mental health as part of that recovery. And then, like you said, shortening those timelines and making certain diagnoses on a sliding scale versus, yeah, you have PTSD, you can't fly. Oh, you don't have PTSD, you can fly. And now there's that sliding scale. But yeah, we'll put this on the description of the podcast. It seems like a lot of really good stuff here that they're making progress with. And I think it's great that, in a lighthearted way, mental health for pilots and air traffic controllers in the aviation field is kind of at the same importance on the FAA by creating this ARC as it is putting humans in space, right?
Yeah, they recognize it as, yeah, so absolutely.
Give me some other nuggets from this ARC. It's 164 pages.
It's long. And it's important to remember that these are recommendations. So the ARC is not the FAA. It's a committee that the FAA sanctioned was made up of people within the industry, but they're creating these recommendations. And then the FAA has through the end of the summer to make changes based on those recommendations. Right now, it's all optimism because we see all the changes that are recommended. We will see over the next few months how the FAA responds. Now, the first thing that they did, they have made one response to the recommendations, and that was good to see. They increased the number of medications that are allowed to be taken by pilots for antidepressant and anti-anxiety. They increased it from 5 to 8, which is really exciting. Some of the other recommendations that were made right now, pilots who are diagnosed with ADHD or on ADHD medications are not allowed to fly. Now, again, from a risk perspective, we know that unmedicated ADHD increases risk in the flight station. But medicated ADHD, people who are diagnosed with ADHD, but who are on medication that's working, have no higher risk than, you or me or anyone else who doesn't. And so one of the recommendations was, hey, let's allow pilots, if they have been diagnosed with ADHD, but are on medication that's working, there's no reason not to let them be in the flight deck. Same thing with PTSD right now. If you're diagnosed with PTSD, it almost inherently has to go all the way up the FAA, kind of to the highest echelons to be able to get the okay from them to be able to fly with PTSD. They're saying, hey, let's knock that down to the AME level. Let's let the AME determine if someone with PTSD is in a good place to go flying. Because again, it's not binary. We recognize now it's not a do I have it or I don't have it. If I do have it, I'm high risk and there's big problems with it. No, we can have people who have been diagnosed with PTSD who are managing it well, who have no symptoms, who have no more risk than anybody else. And so let's let them get the help they need, not ignore it, not keep it undiagnosed because they're worried about it. Let's let them get the help they need and be a productive member of the pilot group while they're doing.
Gotcha. Yeah, those are some good highlights. And so how do pilots go about getting that help, right? These are some great movements, some great progress. We've talked about the mental health continuum, the Are You in the Green, the scale. If I'm listening or I know someone or, I'm flying with somebody who's maybe venting about some things, refer them to the podcast for sure and refer them to Pan. But how does one go about taking that first step?
Great question. It can be a tough first step because generally speaking, one of the common symptoms of being under mental duress or being depressed or anxious is feeling like you're all alone, feeling like you're the only one in the world that's going through it. And so that first step of picking up the phone and asking for help, or whether it's on the phone or face to face with someone and saying, hey, I could use to talk about that, is a huge first step. For pilots, Pan is a great resource. Some of us have people in our lives who understand what being a pilot is like. And so we can talk about those challenges. Hey, I'm stressed and I'm a pilot. So I'm, going to be gone from home for 3 days this week while my significant other is trying to take care of our kids. But some of us don't have those people in our lives. That's where Pan is such a great resource, is because we are Delta pilots. We know what it's like to fly the line for Delta. And so we can be that person you talk to, be that person where you just work through, you verbalize the stressors, the challenges, or whatever's going on in your life to someone who understands your reality. And then all Pan volunteers are trained to know what resources are available, right? So there's a plethora of resources, whether it's at the company, at the union, out in private industry, that are available for pilots. Pan volunteers know what those resources are, know what costs and benefits each of those resources have, and can help you explore potential pathways towards, again, going back to the mental health continuum, back towards getting in the green. And the nice thing about talking to a Pan volunteer versus talking to, say, someone in authority, like, it's still, you get to keep agency in this conversation. So you're never going to be talking to a Pan volunteer and have them say, well, I'm going to pull you off the schedule. You need to go see a therapist before you fly. The agency remains yours. You get to decide how best to move forward. The volunteer is just helping you see the potential pathways forward. And there's nothing magical about a Pan volunteer. Your friend, your spouse, your support group in your life, your pastor could potentially help you as well. I mean, the reality is that just speaking it, just saying, hey man, this sucks. I am having this hard problem. This is what's going on in my life. It puts boundaries on it, right? And it takes it from being this overwhelming thing in my mind that I can't quite put into a box, and puts it out verbally and puts confines on it. So it's okay. So this is the problem and this isn't. So then it's not everything. It's just this thing. So yeah, I would say the first step is finding someone safe, finding someone who you trust. Just open up and talk about it.
Yeah. I'll plug PAN here. That another great aspect is it can be anonymous if you want it to be. You can call the PAN number and remain anonymous. You can fill out a callback request form, also linked to the description here, and PAN will call you. And it's all confidential as well. And
That's right. Yeah. When you're talking to a volunteer, I mean, I can say, hi, my name is Forrest Pendleton. I'm a 737 first officer in Seattle. That's fine. You can also say, hey, I'm not going to tell you my name. I'm not going to tell you anything. I just want you to listen to what's going on. And that's equally fine. We're not worried. It is 100% confidential. Your name will not be passed to anybody. Your situation will not be passed to anyone. It's a safe space for you to work through what's going on and be as candid as you want and not have any concern about it getting back to anyone.
yeah, I think that's a great resource because even though, maybe we have friends who are pilots or family members who are pilots, you don't often want to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm struggling with this issue. Now you have really a PAN volunteer who knows the ins and outs, but they also don't know you, right? And sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody who doesn't know you. And you just say, here's my issue. My name is Frankenstein and I need your help. And they'll plug you in. And it doesn't have to be for these major issues, right? Like, we always think of these like the suicide hotline and you're on your last leg and you call the hotline. Like that's not necessarily the way it is. It could be, I'm trying to track down information on how to get couples therapy and I'm getting the runaround from this agency and this organization and I don't really understand it. Where can I turn? And the PAN volunteer knows and they will totally help you out.
That's a great point. Yeah, we certainly get those calls that are 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 on severity. And we're grateful that people are willing to pick up the phone at that point. My favorite calls are the ones that are a 2 or a 3. Hey, I'm feeling overworked and I feel like maybe I could use, a leave of absence to kind of get my stuff together. Do you know anything about that? Or, hey, yeah, like you said, my spouse and I could probably use some time in front of a therapist. And I want to make sure I know how to do that deliberately so that I don't force myself time out of the flight deck. There's no reason to wait until you're at that, going back to the continuum, the orange or the red, the ill. Call as soon as you recognize that you're not where you want to be on the mental health continuum, and PAN can help you start to figure out that journey back towards where you want to be.
Yeah, love it. I think that's a good pairing between the continuum, that recognition, and then just reaching out to a peer. And these volunteers are just that. They're volunteers. They're on a phone tree. They're essentially on call all the time and they want to help you. It's such a great service that is offered. So please do take advantage of it. Putting all the information and the resources, the phone numbers on the description of the podcast. Also alpa.org/green has all that stuff as well, plus the continuum. Forrest, where else do you want to take this?
I appreciate the opportunity to reiterate how important all of our mental health is. Ignoring your mental health is the same thing as, ignoring that problem with your knee. Like, it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. And instead of being able to do physical therapy, 2 years from now, you're going to need surgery because you didn't address it when you first recognized that it was a problem. Mental health is the same way. Struggling isn't a sign of weakness. Being stressed, feeling depressed is not an indication that you're somehow less or you aren't making it in this world. Life can be hard and that's okay. That is a reality that we're all living with. And taking a minute to ask yourself, how am I doing mentally? And if the answer isn't great, then taking that next step to say, how can I be doing better? What are the steps that I can do, whether that's different areas of self-care or talking to someone to move yourself towards where you want to be on the mental wellness continuum is critically important. And I just appreciate your willingness to help me remind everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hugely important. And, let's challenge pilots in a fun and healthy way. But I feel like if you're listening to this, maybe you know somebody, maybe you don't, maybe you're flying with somebody, but let's challenge each pilot. So pass along this podcast or the other PAN podcast to another pilot who doesn't know that we have the Engage podcast or doesn't know that we have the resources of PAN. Let us know somehow. You can send a dart. You can email us at engagepodcast@alpa.org. You can email me personally. However you want to get that word of, hey, I pass this on. We'll send you a koozie, an Engage koozie. Keep all your beverages cold, I guess warm too. And then let's take it one step further. How about a self-care something? Go to yoga, meditate, use the mental health continuum, and let us know. You could take a picture of yourself in child's pose, or I don't know, whatever you want to do. Let us know that this was helpful, that you did something for yourself or for someone else. And I'm going to up the ante. You get a koozie and an Engage mug. And I hope I know that it's normally for guests only, but I'm going to invite the general population here. If you take one kind act for yourself, one kind act for someone else, use the mental health continuum, spread the word about PAN, and the Engage podcast will send you a koozie and a mug.
That's fantastic, man. I'm going to do that. Even though I got one because I'm a guest, I'm going to do it again so I get my pair. That's all right. They'll figure it out.
Let's do it. We already have the koozies in.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Forrest Pendleton, chair of PAN, the Pilot Assistance Network. It's Mental Health Awareness Month in May, and we've been talking about the mental health continuum. Are you in the green?
If you're not, or if you're not sure, 1-888-4DALPAN. Again, 888-4DALPAN is the phone number to call, talk to a volunteer.
You heard it here. Thanks, Forrest. Appreciate what you and your committee does. All the volunteers, we thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. It's our privilege.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.